Katie Martinez sat in the back row of the lecture hall, her datapad open and ready. The classroom was huge, with seats arranged in a circular pattern around the central stage. Around her, students from dozens of different species whispered to each other, their voices creating a soft buzz that filled the space. Some had scales, others had feathers, and a few seemed to be made of something that looked like living crystal. Katie was the only human in the room. She was the only human in the entire academy. Professor Velmuth glided onto the stage. He was a Thalorian, tall and thin with skin that shimmered like oil on water. His 4 eyes blinked independently as he surveyed the class. Katie had been in his extreme environment survival course for 3 months now, and she still found his appearance fascinating. Back home on Earth, he would have caused quite a stir. Here, he was just another professor. "Good morning, students," Velmuth said, his voice coming through the translator device everyone wore. "Today, we will discuss the classification system for dangerous worlds. Specifically, we will examine Class 12 Death Worlds." The room went quiet. Katie noticed several students lean forward with interest. Her roommate Lissa, a Quillari with soft purple fur and large eyes, sat a few rows ahead. Even from behind, Katie could see her ears perk up. Velmuth touched his control pad, and a hologram appeared above the stage. It showed a planet spinning slowly, its surface covered in swirling clouds and dark oceans. Class 12 Death Worlds represent the most dangerous category in our classification system. These worlds are hostile to most known forms of life. Very few species have ever evolved on such planets, and even fewer have survived long enough to develop civilization. Katie started taking notes. This sounded important for the final exam. "Let me list the primary characteristics of a Class 12 Death World," Velmuth continued. The hologram changed to show a list. First, extreme temperature fluctuations. We are discussing changes of 50 degrees or more between seasons. Some Class 12 worlds experience temperature swings that can kill an unprotected being within hours. Around Katie, students made sounds of distress. She wrote down the number 50, though she wondered why that was considered so extreme. Winter back home in Minnesota could swing from -20 to +30 easily. That was 70 degrees right there. Second, Velmuth said, violent weather systems capable of destroying structures. These include wind speeds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour, electrical storms with millions of lightning strikes, and precipitation events that can flood entire regions. Katie frowned slightly. That sounded like a bad hurricane. She had lived through a few of those. They were scary, sure, but people just boarded up their windows and waited them out. Third, an abundance of aggressive predator species. On Class 12 worlds, predators often hunt in coordinated packs, use advanced tactics, and show remarkable persistence in pursuing prey. Many possess natural weapons such as claws, fangs, or venom that can kill quickly. Katie thought about the nature documentaries she used to watch. Lions, wolves, bears. They were dangerous if you bothered them, but most people never even saw them. You just had to be smart about where you went hiking. Fourth, high gravity levels that make movement difficult and strain biological systems. Fifth, dangerous microorganisms that can cause rapid illness or death. Sixth, atmospheric conditions that include toxic components or dangerously high levels of certain gases. The list kept going. Katie's frown deepened. Each thing Velmuth mentioned sounded less like a special danger and more like regular life. Germs were everywhere. You washed your hands and got your vaccines. The oxygen thing was weird, though. She made a note to ask about that later. These worlds are quarantined in most cases, Velmuth said. The few that have been explored required extreme protective measures. No colonization efforts have ever succeeded on a Class 12 Death World. The risk is simply too great. He pulled up images of different planets. Each one looked hostile in its own way. One was covered in active volcanoes. Another seemed to be in a perpetual ice age. A third had oceans that glowed with what Velnath explained was toxic algae. The survival rate for expeditions to Class 12 worlds is less than 40%. Even with advanced technology and extensive preparation, Velnath continued. These are worlds where nature itself seems designed to kill, where every day is a battle for survival, where weakness means death. Katie stopped writing. She looked at her notes, then back at the hologram. Something felt wrong. All of this sounded familiar. Too familiar. On such worlds, Velnath said, the native life forms must be incredibly resilient. They must adapt to constant danger, develop rapid threat assessment capabilities, and maintain constant vigilance. Any species that evolved on a Class 12 world would be shaped by violence and death at every turn. Katie's hand went up slowly. She usually didn't speak much in class, preferring to listen and learn. But this was bothering her too much to ignore. Velnath noticed her raised hand. Yes, Miss Martinez? You have a question? The room's attention shifted to her. Katie felt dozens of eyes, large and small, turn in her direction. She swallowed nervously. Professor, I don't mean to interrupt, but what you're describing sounds exactly like Earth. The silence that followed was complete. Even the usual background noise of the Academy's ventilation system seemed to fade. Velnath's 4 eyes all focused on Katie at once. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? He asked. He felt her cheeks getting warm, but she pressed on. The temperature changes, the storms, the predators, all of it. That's just normal Earth stuff. I mean, we have all of those things back home. Velnath's skin color shifted slightly, turning a shade darker. He looked down at his datapad, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. Katie watched as his expression changed from confusion to shock. Class, he said slowly, it appears I made an error in my preparation for today's lecture. I was not aware that we had a student from a Class 12 Death World enrolled in the Academy. The whispers started immediately. Katie heard gasps and what might have been words of fear in languages her translator couldn't quite catch. Lissa turned around in her seat, her large eyes wider than usual, staring at Katie like she had never seen her before. But that can't be right, one student called out. It was Vorik, an amphibious being from the water world of Quell. Death World species don't reach space. They're too aggressive, too violent. Velnath looked at Katie, then back at his datapad. According to the Galactic database, Earth is classified as a Class 12 Delta Death World. It scores extremely high on every danger metric we use. He paused, his skin shifting through several colors. Miss Martinez, you are the first being from such a world to ever attend this academy. Katie sat frozen in her seat. Everyone was staring at her now. Some students had moved their seats slightly away. Others leaned in, like she was a dangerous animal in a zoo. I don't understand, Katie said quietly. I'm not special. I'm just from the suburbs. I grew up in a regular neighborhood, went to a regular school. Earth isn't that dangerous. Velnath set down his datapad. Miss Martinez, could you please stay after class? I believe we have much to discuss about your homeworld and your species. Katie nodded, feeling numb. The lecture continued, but she barely heard it. She kept thinking about home. About her parents' house with its small backyard. About the park where she used to play as a kid. About summer barbecues and winter snow days. None of it seemed like survival on a death world. It was just life. It was just normal. But as she looked around at the frightened faces of her classmates, Katie began to realize that maybe her normal wasn't normal at all. The other students filed out of the lecture hall slowly, many of them glancing back at Katie as they left. She could hear them whispering in the corridor outside. Words like Death Worlder and Survivor drifted back through the doorway. Katie stayed in her seat, clutching her datapad and trying to make sense of what had just happened. Professor Valmuth stood at the front of the room, his fingers still moving across his control pad. The hologram had changed to display what looked like a detailed file on Earth. Katie could see images of her home, planet rotating slowly in the air. "Miss Martinez, please come down here," Valmuth said. Not looking up from his reading, Katie gathered her things and walked down the steps to the central stage. Her footsteps echoed in the now empty room. When she reached the bottom, Valmuth finally looked at her, all four of his eyes studying her carefully. "I must apologize," he said. "When you enrolled, I saw that you were from Earth, but it did not check the planetary classification. That was careless of me. Had I known you were from a Class 12 world, I would have adjusted my teaching approach." "I still don't understand why Earth is classified that way," Katie said. "It's really not that bad." Valmuth's skin rippled with what Katie had learned was his species' version of a concerned expression. "Not that bad? Miss Martinez, according to this data, Earth experiences regular seismic activity that can destroy cities. Is that accurate? You mean earthquakes? Yeah, we get those sometimes. But most places don't have them very often. And we build buildings to handle them. You build structures designed to survive the planet trying to shake them apart. Well, yeah. What else would we do?" Valmuth made a note on his datapad. "Fascinating. And what about these hurricanes mentioned in the file? It says they generate winds of over 300 kilometers per hour and can level entire coastal regions." Katie shrugged. "Those are pretty rare. And we have warning systems now. People evacuate to safer areas. Sometimes you have to board up your windows and wait in a shelter, but it's usually fine." "Usually fine," Valmuth repeated, his voice faint. "And if you don't evacuate? Then it can be really dangerous. People can die. But that's why we have the warning systems and emergency plans." The door to the lecture hall opened, and several other students slipped back inside. Katie recognized a few of them from her other classes. They sat in the upper rows, clearly trying to listen without being obvious about it. Valmuth noticed them but didn't send them away. Instead, he continued his questions. "Miss Martinez, please tell me about your childhood. What kind of survival training did you receive?" "Survival training?" Katie blinked. "I didn't have any special training. I just went to regular school. But surely your parents taught you how to avoid the planet's dangers. I mean, they taught me basic safety stuff. Look both ways before crossing the street. Don't talk to strangers. Don't touch wild animals. Stay inside during bad storms." One of the students in the upper rows made a sound that might have been a gasp. Katie looked up and saw it was Chun, a bird-like being from her mathematics class. "You have to be taught not to approach wild animals?" Chun called down. "They're not just naturally afraid of you?" "No," Katie said, confused. "Why would they be afraid of people? We're not that big compared to a lot of animals." "What kind of animals?" Valmuth asked, pulling up a new section of the Earth file. Katie thought about it. "Well, there are deer, squirrels, rabbits. Those are pretty common. In some areas you might see bears, wolves, cougars. In Australia, they have kangaroos and stuff. Africa has lions, elephants, rhinos." "Bears," Valmuth said slowly, reading from his file. "Large predatory mammals with powerful claws and jaws, capable of running at speeds up to 60 kilometers per hour, despite weighing up to 700 kilograms. These share habitat with humans?" "Not usually in cities," Katie said. "But yeah, if you go camping or hiking in certain areas, you might see them. You're supposed to make noise so you don't surprise them and keep your food locked up. You voluntarily go into areas where these predators live?" This question came from Lissa, who had also returned and was sitting near the back. "For recreation?" "Camping is fun," Katie said defensively. You sleep in a tent, cook food over a fire, go swimming in the lake. It's relaxing. Swimming, Velma said. In bodies of water large enough to drown in. Well, yeah. But you learn how to swim when you're a kid. It's not a big deal. More students had filtered back into the room. Katie counted at least 15 now, all listening intently. Word must have spread fast about the human from the death world. Varric raised a webbed hand. Professor, may I ask a question? Velnath nodded, seeming too overwhelmed to object. Miss Martinez, Varric said, my homeworld has no land predators at all. The most dangerous animal is a small fish that can give you a minor sting. What is the most dangerous animal on Earth? Katie had to think about that. I guess it depends on how you measure it. Hippos kill a lot of people in Africa. Mosquitoes spread diseases that kill even more. Crocodiles are pretty dangerous. Box jellyfish can kill you in minutes. Saltwater crocodiles can be over 6 meters long. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Velmath held up a hand for quiet. These creatures all coexist with humans on your planet? He asked. Sure, most people never see them. You just have to be careful in certain areas. What about microorganisms? Velmath asked. The file mentioned something called bacteria that live inside human bodies. Oh, yeah. We have good bacteria in our digestive system. They help us process food. There are bad ones too, but we have medicine for those. You have predatory microorganisms living inside you right now? Liz's voice was faint. I mean, they're not really predators. Most of them are helpful. Some can make you sick, but that's what doctors are for. A new voice joined the conversation. What happens if you get sick and don't see a doctor? It was Mira, a being made of crystalline structures that Katie had partnered with on a physics project. Depends on what you're sick with. Sometimes your body fights it off on its own. Sometimes you need medicine. Sometimes, if it's really bad and you don't get help, you can die. Your bodies fight microscopic invaders on their own? Myra sounded amazed. Our species requires immediate medical intervention for any bacterial exposure. Katie was starting to feel uncomfortable with all the attention. She turned back to Professor Velnath. I really don't understand why this is so shocking. This is just normal life on Earth. Billions of people live there. We have cities, schools, jobs. We're not in constant danger. Velnath was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Miss Martinez, I have been studying xenobiology for 40 years. In that time, I have learned about thousands of species from hundreds of worlds. Do you know how many spacefaring species evolved on Class 12 death worlds? Katie shook her head. 1, Velnath said quietly. Humans are the only species in known galactic history to develop advanced civilization on a Class 12 world. Every other death world species either died out or never progressed beyond primitive survival. Your species shouldn't exist. You certainly shouldn't have reached the stars. But we're not special, Katie protested. We're just people. Just people, Velnath repeated. He looked at the students gathered in the room. She considers herself just people. Her planet has predators that can kill with a single bite, weather that can destroy cities, invisible organisms that wage war inside her body every day. And she calls it normal. Because it is normal, Katie said, frustrated now. You're making it sound like Earth is some kind of nightmare planet. But it's beautiful. We have forests and oceans and mountains. We have seasons and rain and sunshine. Yes, there are dangerous things, but there's also amazing things. Most days are perfectly safe. Most days, Velnath said. On my homeworld, every day is safe. We have no predators. Our weather is stable. Our diseases were eliminated centuries ago. That is normal for most species in the galaxy, Miss Martinez. Katie felt something shift in her understanding. She looked around at the other students, really looked at them. Lissa, whose fur was so soft, she probably had never needed to worry about physical defense. Chun, whose hollow bones would snap easily under pressure. Vorik, whose moist skin required careful humidity control. They weren't weak. They were just adapted to gentler worlds. And she was adapted to Earth. So what does this mean? Katie asked quietly. Am I going to be kicked out of the academy? Kicked out? Velnath's skin rippled in surprise. Why would we do that? Because I'm from a dangerous species? Miss Martinez, humans have been part of the galactic community for 20 years. Your species has proven to be peaceful, cooperative, and valuable. The fact that you survived a death world doesn't make you dangerous. It makes you remarkably resilient. He looked at the assembled students. In fact, I would like to request that you participate in a series of guest lectures. Your perspective on survival could be invaluable to these students. Would you be willing? Katie looked at the faces watching her. They didn't look scared anymore. They looked curious, fascinated. She thought about her childhood, about all the things she had learned that she never realized were unusual. I guess I could do that, she said. But I'm really not an expert on anything. You're an expert on surviving a Class 12 death world, Velnath said. That makes you one of the rarest experts in the galaxy. 2 weeks had passed since Katie's revelation in Professor Velnath's class, and life at the academy had changed dramatically. Students who used to avoid her now sought her out, asking endless questions about Earth. Some were fascinated, others remained nervous, but the fear had mostly faded. Katie found herself becoming a minor celebrity on campus, though not always in ways she enjoyed. The rumors were the worst part. She had heard whispers that humans were secret weapons, that Earth was a prison planet, that she had undergone military training since childhood. None of it was true, but the stories persisted. Katie tried to ignore them and focus on her studies. Today was different, though. Today was the practical exam for the Extreme Environment Survival course. Katie stood in the staging area with her assigned team. They were waiting for their turn to enter the simulation zone, a massive enclosed space where the academy recreated different environmental challenges. The exam was simple in concept. Survive for 48 hours in a controlled but challenging environment. In practice, it was known as one of the hardest tests in the curriculum. Her team consisted of 5 members. There was Lissa, her purple-furred roommate, who had become a good friend. Vorik, the amphibious being who always kept his skin moist with a portable humidifier. Chun, the bird-like student with hollow bones and sharp eyes. Mira, the crystalline being whose body refracted light in beautiful patterns. And Katie. They had been assigned together randomly, but Katie suspected Professor Velnath had influenced the selection. Her teammates seemed nervous, and not just about the exam. So, Vorik said, breaking the awkward silence, I suppose you'll be taking charge? Given your experience with dangerous environments? Katie shook her head quickly. No, I'm fine following someone else's lead. I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. But you're from Earth, Chun said. You must have extensive survival training. I really don't, Katie insisted. I've been camping a few times with my family. That's it. Lissa touched Katie's arm gently. We're not scared of you anymore, Katie. We know you're not dangerous. But we could use your knowledge. None of us have ever faced real environmental challenges. Before Katie could respond, their team number was called. It was time to enter the simulation. The 5 of them walked through the entrance portal and found themselves in a forested area. Tall trees surrounded them, their leaves creating a canopy overhead. Katie could hear water running somewhere nearby. The air was warm and slightly humid. This is the challenge? Myra asked, looking around. This seems pleasant. A holographic display appeared in front of them, showing their mission parameters. They had 48 hours to survive in this environment. They would be monitored for safety, but rescue would only come if someone was in critical danger or if they activated the emergency beacon. Using the beacon meant failing the exam. Around them, Katie could see other teams through the transparent barriers that separated each simulation zone. They were already unpacking elaborate equipment: portable shelters, food synthesizers, water purification units, climate control devices. Should we set up our equipment? Vorik asked, gesturing to their supply pack. Katie looked at the pack, then at the forest. Maybe we should explore a bit first? Find water? Check out the area? Find water? Chun tilted her head. We have water purification units in the pack. Sure, but natural water sources are good to know about. And we should figure out the layout of our area. Her teammates exchanged glances but followed as Katie started walking toward the sound of running water. She found a small stream within 5 minutes, clear and flowing over smooth rocks. Katie knelt down and cupped some water in her hands, examining it closely. It looked clean, no visible debris or odd colors. She sniffed it. Smelled fine. What are you doing? Lissa asked, alarmed. Just checking the water. Katie took a small sip and swished it around her mouth before swallowing. 4 gasps of horror filled the air. You just drank untreated water, Vorik exclaimed. Without testing it for toxins or parasites or bacterial content. Katie looked up at them, confused. It's fine. The stream is clear and moving fast. That usually means it's okay to drink. Usually? Myra's crystalline structure seemed to vibrate with stress. You base survival decisions on usually. Well, yeah. I mean, if I had testing equipment, I'd use it. But in a pinch, clear running water is generally safe. She noticed her teammates all taking steps back from the stream, as if it might attack them. Okay, Katie said, standing up and brushing off her knees. How about we set up a base camp? We should probably make a fire too. The supply pack has a thermal generator, Chun said. Right, but fire is useful for more than heat. We can cook with it, use it as a signal, and it helps keep animals away. There are animals here? Lissa's ears flattened against her head. Katie listened carefully. She could hear birds in the trees and the rustle of small creatures in the undergrowth. Probably just small stuff. The academy wouldn't put us in actual danger. She started gathering dry twigs and branches, showing her teammates how to find good kindling. They watched her like she was performing some kind of ancient ritual. Now we just need to start it, Katie said, arranging the wood in a small pyramid shape. Where's the plasma starter? Vorik asked, digging through the supply pack. Don't really need one. Katie found 2 pieces of dry wood and a flat rock. She started demonstrating the friction method. Her dad had taught her on camping trips. Her teammates stood in stunned silence as Katie worked, rotating one stick against another in a steady rhythm. It took several minutes and her arms were getting tired, but eventually a small ember formed. She carefully transferred it to a nest of dry grass and blew on it gently until flames appeared. You created fire, Mira said, her voice barely above a whisper. With wood. Just wood. It's not that hard once you get the hang of it, Katie said, feeding small twigs into the growing flames. My dad showed me when I was about 12. A rumble of thunder interrupted them. Katie looked up at the sky, noticing dark clouds gathering. Looks like rain. We should probably build some kind of shelter. Should we activate the emergency shelters? Chun asked. For rain? Katie looked surprised. No, we can just make something simple. Come on, I'll show you. She led them to a spot near a large tree with low-hanging branches. Using branches and large leaves, Katie demonstrated how to build a basic lean-to shelter. Her teammates helped, though they seemed uncertain about the whole process. By the time the rain started, they had a decent shelter erected. It wasn't fancy, but it would keep them dry. The 5 of them huddled inside as rain poured down outside. Katie noticed that in the other simulation zones, teams were activating their emergency shelters or even calling for extraction. The rain was apparently too much for them to handle. Is rain not normal? Katie asked. Our homeworld has scheduled precipitation, Lisa said. It's controlled and predictable. This is chaotic. It's just a thunderstorm. They're pretty common on Earth. Lightning flashed, followed immediately by a crack of thunder. Vorik jumped, splashing water from his humidifier. Katie kept the fire going despite the rain, adjusting their shelter to protect it. She had done this before on a camping trip when unexpected weather had rolled in. It felt strange to be the calm one when everyone else seemed stressed. How are you so relaxed? Chun asked, watching Katie work. It's just rain. We're dry. We have fire. We have water nearby. This is actually pretty comfortable. Over the next several hours, Katie showed her team other basics. She identified edible plants growing nearby, explaining how her father had taught her which ones were safe. She demonstrated how to find direction using the sun. She caught fish from the stream using a makeshift trap, much to everyone's amazement. You're hunting, Vorik said, staring at the fish. For food. Well, yeah. We should eat. The supply pack has ration bars, but fresh fish is better. Better? Myra asked. How can potentially contaminated wild animal flesh be better than sanitized nutrition bars? Katie just smiled and started preparing the fish for cooking. As it sizzled over the fire, the smell made her teammates curious despite their reservations. By evening, they were all sitting around the fire, full of cooked fish and gathered berries. The rain had stopped, and stars were visible through breaks in the clouds. Other teams were still visible through the barriers. Most of them huddled in their emergency shelters. This is actually kind of nice, Lisa admitted. Her fur now dry and fluffy from the fire's warmth. Camping usually is, Katie said. Once you get past the initial adjustment. Is this really what you did for fun on Earth? Chun asked. Some people do it every weekend. My family did it a few times a year. It's a way to relax and get away from technology and stress. Vorik looked around at the forest, the fire, the stream. Your idea of relaxation is our idea of a survival nightmare. Katie laughed. I guess that's fair. But you're all doing great. You learn to build shelter, start a fire, find food and water. That's more than most people back home learn. In the monitoring room, Professor Velnath watched the screen showing all the teams. 42 teams had started the exam. 38 had already called for extraction or activated emergency protocols. 3 more were barely hanging on. Only 1 team seemed completely comfortable. He watched, Katie teaching her teammates to identify constellations, all of them laughing as Vorik tried to roast a berry. Katie's team was the only one to complete the full 48 hours. When they emerged from the simulation zone, dirty and tired but smiling, they found Professor Velnath and several Academy officials waiting for them. Congratulations, Velnath said. His skin shifting through colors that Katie had learned indicated excitement. You are the first team in 3 years to complete this particular simulation without requesting extraction. Lisa's ears perked up with pride. Really? We didn't think we did anything special. That's precisely what makes it special, Velnath replied. He looked at Katie. Miss Martinez, might I have a word? Katie followed the professor to his office while her teammates went to clean up. The office was filled with specimens from various worlds, all carefully preserved behind protective barriers. Velnath gestured for Katie to sit. I've been reviewing the footage from your simulation, he said, pulling up a holographic display. Your approach was fundamentally different from what we teach here at the Academy. I'm sorry, Katie said quickly. I didn't mean to do anything wrong. Wrong? Velma's skin rippled with what might have been amusement. No, Miss Martinez. What you did was extraordinary. While other teams relied entirely on technology, you used practical skills and direct environmental interaction. You taught your teammates to actually survive, not just endure with equipment. He showed her clips from other team simulations. Most had set up their emergency shelters immediately, and then sat inside them for the duration, eating ration bars and waiting for the time to pass. Several had panicked at the first sign of rain. Many had called for extraction within 12 hours. They're not trained for this, Katie said, watching the footage. They've never had to deal with weather or finding their own food. Exactly. And that's what I wanted to discuss with you. I would like to offer you a position as a teaching assistant for this course. Your perspective and practical knowledge would be invaluable to our students. Katie blinked in surprise. But I'm a student myself. I don't know enough to teach. You know things that no one else in this academy knows. Practical survival from a Class 12 death world. That knowledge is unique and precious. Katie thought about it. Can I think about it? Of course. In the meantime, I've arranged for you to give a guest lecture tomorrow. The entire academy has requested attendance. Word has spread about your team's success. The next day, Katie found herself standing in the largest lecture hall on campus. Every seat was filled, and students lined the walls. She had never spoken in front of so many people before, and her hands shook as she held her notes. Professor Velnath introduced her. And then Katie was alone on the stage with hundreds of eyes watching her. Hi, she started, her voice amplified by the room's systems. I'm Katie Martinez. I'm from Earth. I guess you all know that. Already. A few friendly laughs from the audience helped her relax. Slightly, Professor Velnath asked me to talk about growing up on Earth. I'm not really sure what to say because to me, it was all just normal. But I guess that's the point, right? What's normal to me is really different from what's normal to you. She pulled up images from her datapad, projecting them on the hologram system. The first was a picture of her family's house. This is where I grew up. It's in Minnesota, which is one of the northern states in my country. We had really cold winters and pretty hot summers. Temperature could swing from -30 Celsius to +35 Celsius, depending on the season. She heard gasps from the audience. That seems like a lot to you, I guess. But we just wore different clothes. Heavy coats and boots in winter, shorts and t-shirts in summer. You adapt. The next image was of her family's dog, a golden retriever named Buddy. This is Buddy. He lived with us for 12 years. He was a great dog. That's a predator species, someone called from the audience. Katie recognized the voice as belonging to a Kavati student from her engineering class. Well, yeah, technically. Dogs are descended from wolves. But we domesticated them thousands of years ago. Now they're companions. Buddy was gentle and friendly. He loved playing fetch and getting belly rubs. You kept a predator in your home? Another voice asked. With children? Katie nodded. Lots of families have dogs. Some have cats too, which are even more predatory. They're pets. They're part of the family. She showed more pictures. Her old school, the park where she played as a kid, the lake where her family went swimming. Each image prompted questions that revealed just how different her life had been. You attended a learning facility with hundreds of other young humans? This question came from Lissa, who was sitting in the front row. Without protective barriers between you? Yeah, that's just how school works. We sat in classrooms, played together at recess, ate lunch in the cafeteria. Sometimes kids would push or shove each other, but that was considered bad behavior. Physical contact was discouraged. Not all physical contact. We hugged our friends, held hands, played contact sports. But hitting or pushing someone was against the rules. Katie clicked to a new image, this one from a family camping trip. It showed her father teaching her how to start a fire. This is my dad teaching me basic camping skills. I was about 10 in this picture. He showed me how to make fire, set up a tent, identify safe plants, find clean water sources. Your parental unit taught you combat survival at age 10. The question came from Chun. It wasn't combat survival. It was just camping. We did it for fun, to spend time together as a family. You voluntarily subjected yourself to wilderness conditions for recreation. Katie smiled. Yes, and it was fun. We would tell stories around the campfire, look at the stars, cook food outdoors. Some of my best memories are from those trips. She showed a picture of a thunderstorm she had photographed a few years ago. Dark clouds filled the sky, and lightning forked down in the distance. This is a thunderstorm. We get these pretty regularly in summer. You can hear the thunder from miles away, and the lightning is dangerous if you're outside. But they're also beautiful. And the rain helps plants grow. You find destructive weather phenomena beautiful? Myra asked. Well, yeah. Nature can be dangerous and beautiful at the same time. Thunderstorms, snowstorms, even hurricanes have a kind of terrible beauty to them. You respect the danger, but you can also appreciate the power and majesty. The questions kept coming, and Katie did her best to answer them honestly. She talked about learning to swim, even though drowning was a real risk. About playing in the snow despite the cold. About hiking in forests where bears lived. About eating foods that would be toxic to most alien species. Chocolate contains a compound called theobromine, she explained. It's poisonous to a lot of earth animals, like dogs and cats. But humans can eat it just fine. We actually really like it. You consume poison for pleasure? Vorik sounded amazed. I mean, it's not poison to us. Same with caffeine and capsaicin, the stuff that makes peppers spicy. Our bodies can handle them. An older student in the back raised a hand. Miss Martinez, I have a question about human culture. Given that your world is so dangerous, I would expect humans to be aggressive and territorial. But from what we've seen, your species values cooperation and peace. How did that develop? Katie paused, thinking carefully. I think it's because we had to cooperate to survive. Earth is dangerous, yeah. But humans aren't the strongest or fastest species on our planet. We survived by working together, by forming communities and helping each other. Alone, a human in the wilderness probably wouldn't last long. But together, we built civilizations. She clicked to a picture of her hometown, showing the streets and buildings. This is where I grew up. Thousands of people living together, cooperating, sharing resources. We didn't survive Earth by being the most violent. We survived by being the most cooperative. Professor Velna spoke up from his seat. That's a crucial point. Most Death World species that we've discovered either went extinct or remained in primitive survival states. Humans are unique in that you developed advanced civilization despite your harsh environment. Perhaps because of it. Katie nodded. Earth taught us to be tough and adaptable. But we chose to use those traits to help each other instead of fighting each other. I think that's what really defines humanity. The lecture continued for another hour. Katie showed pictures of human cities, of farmland where food was grown, of hospitals where the sick were treated. She explained how humans had learned to predict and prepare for natural disasters. How communities came together after emergencies. How knowledge was shared freely to help everyone survive better. By the end, the audience's perception had clearly shifted. They no longer looked at Katie with fear or even just curiosity. They looked at her with respect and understanding. During the question period, a young student near the front raised a tentative hand. Ms. Martinez, do you think we could learn to be more like humans? To be braver and more adaptable? Katie smiled warmly. You don't need to be more like humans. You need to understand your own strengths. Humans are good at surviving harsh environments because we had to be. But you're good at other things. You've built a peaceful galactic community. You've created technologies we're still learning about. You value life and avoid violence. Those are amazing qualities. She looked out at the assembled students. Earth made us strong in certain ways, but your worlds made you strong in other ways. We're all. 3 months had passed since Katie's guest lecture, and the academy felt like home now. She had accepted Professor Velna's offer to become a teaching assistant, and twice a week she led practical survival workshops. Students from all disciplines attended, eager to learn skills that had never been part of their education before. Katie walked across campus toward the project hall, her datapad tucked under her arm. Final exams were approaching, and her team had drawn one of the most challenging assignments, creating a comprehensive survival guide for an unexplored water world designated as Planet GJ1214b. The planet featured extreme tides, violent storms, and deep oceans with unknown dangers. Her team was already gathered when she arrived. Lissa, Varric, Chen, and Mira had become close friends over the semester. They had learned to trust Katie's knowledge while also teaching her about their own cultures and technologies. The tidal data is concerning, Varric said, his skin glistening with moisture. Water levels change by up to 50 meters twice per day. Any settlement would need to be mobile or built high above sea level. Or underwater, Katie suggested, sitting down with the group. On Earth, we have submarines that can handle deep ocean pressure. Maybe we could adapt that technology. Chen ruffled her feathers thoughtfully. But the storms. The data shows wind speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. No structure could survive that on the surface. Katie thought about the hurricanes she had experienced back home. Coastal communities on Earth deal with hurricanes by having strong building codes and evacuation plans. But you're right, 300 kilometers per hour is really severe. What if we focused on underwater habitats? The storms wouldn't affect structures deep enough below the surface. Brilliant, Myra said, her crystalline body refracting the light into rainbow patterns. We could position habitats in the calmer deep zones and use the tidal energy for power generation. They worked for hours, combining Katie's practical Earth-based knowledge with the advanced technology her teammates understood. Katie described how coastal communities on Earth built on stilts or designed floating structures. Vorik contributed his species' expertise with aquatic environments. Chun suggested aerial observation platforms that could be retracted during storms. Mira calculated the structural requirements for pressure-resistant habitats. What emerged was a survival guide. Unlike any the Academy had seen before, it didn't just focus on avoiding the planet's dangers or relying purely on technology. It showed how to work with the environment, to adapt and coexist with the natural challenges. 2 weeks later, all the teams gathered in the grand auditorium for final presentations. Katie's team was scheduled last. They watched as other groups presented their work, most focusing on orbital stations and minimal planetary contact. The approaches were technically sound, but avoided the actual challenge of surviving on the planet itself. When their turn came, Katie let Lissa lead the presentation. Her friend had grown so much in confidence over the semester. Lissa's voice was steady as she explained their hybrid approach of underwater habitats, tidal power generation, and adaptive architecture. Vorik demonstrated their water filtration systems, inspired by Earth's desalination technology, but enhanced with alien engineering. Chun showed their storm warning network and retractable observation posts. Myra presented the structural calculations that proved their habitats could withstand the crushing ocean depths. Then Katie took the stage for the final section. She had prepared a holographic simulation showing a day in the life of their proposed settlement. Our approach is based on a simple principle, Katie said, her voice calm and clear. We don't fight the planet. We learn to live with it. On Earth, humans have settlements in deserts and Arctic regions, on islands prone to tsunamis, in areas with active volcanoes. We survive by adapting, by understanding the rhythms of nature, and by building communities that support each other. The simulation showed colonists moving between underwater habitats during high tide, then emerging to tend floating gardens during calm periods. It showed them harvesting tidal energy and using the planet's natural resources sustainably. The ocean isn't our enemy, Katie continued. It's our environment. Yes, it's dangerous. But danger and opportunity often exist in the same place. The tides that threaten us can also power our civilization. The deep ocean that seems hostile can also protect us from surface storms. We just need to change our perspective. When the presentation ended, the auditorium was silent for a moment. Then applause began, growing until it filled the entire space. The judging panel, composed of senior professors and industry experts, conferred quietly. Finally, an elderly Kovati judge stood. Katie recognized her as Professor Delmer, one of the most respected xenobiologists in the galaxy. She had been studying alien life forms for over 2 centuries. I have been reviewing student projects at this academy for 85 years, Delmer said, her voice carrying despite her age. In that time, I have seen brilliant technical solutions, clever applications of theory, and impressive research. But what I have not seen until today is true understanding of adaptation. She gestured to Katie's team. You did not just propose a way to survive on this planet. You proposed a way to live there, to build a community, to work with nature rather than against it. This is wisdom that comes from a unique source. Delmer looked directly at Katie. Young human, your species has taught the galaxy an important lesson. Most of us come from gentle worlds, and when we encounter harsh environments, our instinct is to avoid them or to dominate them with technology. But you showed us a third path, adaptation and coexistence. She paused, and Katie saw something like wonder in her ancient eyes. I have studied galactic history extensively. When species from Class 12 death worlds are discovered, they are usually either extinct or trapped in primitive survival states. The few that survived became aggressive and violent. But humans are different. You faced a world designed to kill you, and you responded not with violence but with ingenuity and cooperation. The judge turned to address the entire auditorium. Earth should have destroyed humanity. Instead, it forged a species capable of both great strength and great compassion. That is a rare combination in this galaxy. Katie felt her eyes getting wet. She hadn't cried since leaving Earth, but these words touched something deep inside her. Later that evening, after their team had been awarded top marks and congratulations had been shared, Katie found herself alone on the Academy's observation deck. Through the transparent dome, she could see the stars and, with the right filters, even spot her home solar system. The door hissed open, and Professor Velmuth entered. He stood beside her, looking out at the stars. I received a communication today from the Galactic Education Council, he said quietly. They want to establish an exchange program with Earth. They want more human students to attend academies across the galaxy. That's good, Katie said. Humans have a lot to learn from other species, and much to teach, as you have demonstrated. Velma's skin shifted through thoughtful colors. They also offered you a position, Miss Martinez. After you graduate, they want you to travel to different academies, teaching survival and adaptation courses. You would be the youngest professor in the council's history. Katie turned to look at him surprised. But I'm not special. Any human could teach what I know. That's what makes it so valuable. Your knowledge isn't rare among humans, but it's priceless to the rest of us. Do you know how many species contacted me after your lecture? 47 different civilizations, all wanting to understand how humans survived a Class 12 world. All wanting to learn from Earth's example. He pulled up a holographic display showing messages from across the galaxy. Katie saw requests from species she had never heard of, all asking about human survival techniques, human community building, human approaches to dangerous environments. Why do they care so much? Katie asked. Because the galaxy is expanding. We're discovering new worlds every day, and many of them are harsh. Some are Class 10 or 11 death worlds. Until now, we simply avoided them, marked them as uninhabitable. But you've shown us that inhabitable and uninhabitable are not the same thing. Velneth gestured to the stars. There are species out there struggling to survive on worlds that aren't quite gentle enough for them. There are colonies failing because they don't know how to adapt. You can help them, Miss Martinez. You can teach them what humanity learned on Earth. That survival isn't just about technology. It's about understanding, adaptation, and cooperation. Katie thought about her hometown, about her family, about the life she had known before coming to the academy. She thought about camping trips with her father, swimming in lakes, walking through forests where bears lived. All of it had seemed so ordinary, but maybe ordinary was exactly what the galaxy needed to see. I'll do it, she said quietly. I'll teach them what I know. You'll need to go home first, Velneth said. To really understand what makes humanity special, you should see Earth again with new eyes. Appreciate what it means to come from such a world a week later. Katie stood in the shuttle bay, preparing to return to Earth for a brief visit before starting her teaching position. Her friends had come to see her off. Lissa hugged her carefully, still mindful of Katie's greater strength. Vorik gave her a traditional water blessing,